Good morning. Today we'll have a long case discussion on peripheral arterial disease. Dr. Nadim Khan is a third year JR at IPGN will present the case, and Professor Gautam Das, Professor of Surgery at IPGN Hospital, will take us through the long case, and I'll also be there. So, Dr. Nadim, you can start your presentation. Share your screen. Yeah.
Yes, sir, I hope it's visible.
Please start.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Nadim Khan. I'll be presenting a case on peripheral vascular disease. Patient particular is Mr. X, a 30-year-old male residing in Howrah, daily labor profession, came to the OPD with complaints of pain in the left lower limb during walking for the last 2 years, which was associated with black discoloration of his second and third toe of the same foot for the last 4 months. History of present illness. The patient was apparently well 2 years back when he experienced pain in the left calf region after walking for about 1 kilometer. But he was able to continue to walk in spite of this pain. Gradually, when his symptoms aggravated, he started having pain in a less distance, like for about 200 meters also he started having pain, beyond which he could not continue to walk and he had to take rest to get relief from the pain. For the last 4 months, the patient is having continuous dull aching pain, even without walking, on rest also, which disturbs his sleep. He has some relief of pain, keeping his leg below the level of the bed. Since the last 4 months, patient has also noticed gradual blackish discoloration of the tip of his second and third toe of his left foot, which is associated with the continuous dull aching pain in the same region. The blackish discoloration gradually progressed and eventually involved the entire second and third toes with which he currently presents. There is no history of pain or discoloration in any other limb or digits. He does not have any associated complaints of chest pain or breathlessness. There is no history of any abdominal pain or loss of consciousness. Neither does he have any complaints of tingling or numbness in any limb. Past history does not have any episode of similar episodes in the past in either of the limbs. Personal history: his sleep was reduced due to the resting pain. Appetite remained normal. Bowel and bladder habits were essentially normal. The smoking addiction history was found to be positive. He was known to be a smoker for the last 10 years, smoking about 10 to 15 BDs per day, and claims to have given up since the last 3 months. Patient is non-diabetic, non-hypertensive, and euthyroid state. Family history: is a married man for the last 5 years living with his wife and 3-year-old daughter. There is no history of similar disease in the family, nor any other classical disease in the family history of cancer or any heart diseases. So shall I stop here or should I continue to examination?
Wait. We will discuss the presentation part.
Yes.
Dr. Das, you can discuss his history presentation. Disconnected. Dr. Das got disconnected. Okay, Nadim, you have presented a case of a 30 years gentleman. Okay.
Yes,
but actually, we are finding now lesser and lesser cases of Buerger's disease. So it is difficult to give a diagnosis of Barjas disease in the real exam case. So you should always keep in mind that you will not get a classical Barjas disease nowadays in the OPD. We are not seeing for last, in fact, few years.
Okay,
And
sir.
now more common disease that are being presented in the OPD are the patients who are elderly patients, who are more likely
The
diabetic,
sclerotic,
and elderly
the
patient
sclerotic and
having
diabetic.
peripheral arterial disease due to atherosclerosis, where the disease position may not be same. Okay. So
Yes.
what you are trying to present is a 30-year gentleman. So if you go through the history of a classical Barjas disease patient, what are the criteria to diagnose the patient has got Barjas disease?
So criteria, there will be a Raynaud's phenomenon,
Yes.
and so there will be involvement of the small and medium vessels of the limbs,
Yes.
and there's inflammations along the thrombophlebitis, sir, of the
Yes.
veins.
So Barjas disease is characterized by three criteria. One is it affects the medium and small size vessels. Number one, it can affect the veins in the form of thrombophlebitis of the superficial or deep veins, and you may say the Raynaud's phenomenon. But all may not be present. But as I
Oh,
said, that this history of classical history of smoking, present in the Barjas disease is getting rare nowadays. And more patients are coming to OPD who are having atherosclerotic vascular disease or diabetic related vascular disease. Okay. So if you go to the history, you have started with a classical history of claudication. Okay. So what do you mean by claudication?
so claudication is a cramp-like muscular pain in the limbs while walking.
Yes. So it's a cramping pain which comes on walking. Okay, that is claudication. There are two distinct forms of claudication. One we call as a vascular claudication, which is called neurogenic claudication. So, what is the difference between a vascular claudication and neurogenic claudication?
So vascular claudication, as it suggests, is due to the inadequate blood supply in the
Yes.
muscle during exercise. That's
So,
what causes it.
yeah.
Compared to neurogenic, sir, which is due to nerve compression.
Yes.
The
So this is the
both
pathology.
have pain on walking.
Yes.
Both have
So
pain
how to
on walking.
differentiate?
The difference is that, sir, in vascular claudication, the pain occurs after some time because it takes time for the blood supply to become inadequate for the muscle entirely. But in neurogenic pain, sir, in neurogenic claudication, the nerve compression starts earlier because it starts sooner than vascular claudication.
And what else in neurogenic claudication? There is another important differentiation between a vascular and neurogenic claudication. In neurogenic claudication, the pain may come after even first few steps. And in vascular claudication, patient has to just take rest. Once the patient stands still, the pain disappears. In neurogenic claudication, patient has to assume some posture because on taking rest, the compression of the nerve may not be relieved. Patient knows the maneuver that he turns to the right or turns to the left, then this compression of the nerve goes off and he's getting relief of pain. So patient need to assume some posture to get relief of pain in neurogenic claudication. So this is important because this claudication pain may occur in either vascular disease or neurogenic disease. So in the history, you have to take a proper history. What are the different grades of claudication?
So there are basically three grades of claudication. Grade one being, so the patient is patient has pain in the legs on walking, but it disappears after continuing to walk. Grade two, so the patient when the patient has started walking, pain is there, and he can continue to walk in spite of slight pain in the legs. And so grade three, there is pain after walking for some time. After which the pain aggravates and the patient has to stop. The patient has to get rest to relieve from pain.
So what is the explanation? In these grades of claudication, how does it quantify the disease process?
So in grade one, so the patient is having pain which disappears basically due to the obstruction has just started, sir. So on continued walking, the substrates that are
So simply, if you answer simply that these grades of claudication indicates the degree of
progression.
vascular disease. In mild disease, once the patient having pain on walking, the pain disappears because patient has adequate collaterals and the metabolites are washed off.
Yes, sir.
In a more moderate disease, patient has claudication pain and then he can continue. That means that ischemia is not so severe that patient has to take rest. So that indicates the severity of the vascular disease. Okay. So you mentioned about, go to the next slide. Next. Yes. So a patient has got a Barger's disease or atherosclerotic disease. This patient may have atherosclerotic is a generalized disease. As well as generalized disease, this can affect the coronary arteries, this can affect the cardiac arteries, this can affect the abdominal vessels. So patient will have other symptoms. So these are the important symptoms we should always ask. In patient has got a Barger's disease or coronary disease, we have to exclude because you have to diagnose the patient. At the end, you have to say whether the patient has got a disease confined to the limbs or patient has got a generalized disease. So what would you say? No, it's abdominal pain.
Not only that. Not only
Yeah. Dr. Das, yes, please.
Yeah. Not only that, this peripheral vascular disease may affect the other limbs also and other organs also.
Yeah.
So, Nadim, what is the definition of peripheral vascular disease? What do you mean by peripheral vascular disease?
So I'm not very familiar with the definitions.
Peripheral means what?
So
peripheral vascular disease is not only the limb. Heart and brain. Other than heart and brain, their peripheral vascular disease may affect other organs. So you have to take the proper history as Dr. Saha said.
Actually, Dr. Das, we are discussing about the presentation part. So yes, I asked him about the claudication, difference between a neurogenic and vascular claudication.
Yes, I have heard that.
Yeah. So what I said, Nadim also, don't try to create always a history of Barger's disease because we are finding much less and less patient of Barger's disease. This history should be more of a atherosclerotic vascular disease, having a disease in the elderly patients, having ischemia in the limbs, maybe the claudication in the thigh or in the cuff, which may suggest higher up disease. And patient may have associated coronary artery disease also. Okay. So Nadim, we can come to the examination part.
So just add a doubt, sir. May I ask it, sir?
Yes. Tell me.
So I'm saying like peripheral vascular disease, we mainly consider it can be Buerger's disease or atherosclerotic peripheral vascular disease. It can be due to a diabetic foot. But sir, is vasculitis a significant differential diagnosis in this case?
No. You see, a patient with vascularity does not present with claudication. You try to understand. Patient having a collagen vascular disease is usually involved the digits. Patient may have features of Raynaud's phenomenon. Patient may have features of ischemia confined to the tip of the toes. Usually, the presentation is not like having a gangrene involving the whole of the digit and claudication. So you'll keep in the differential diagnosis, but if you see the presentation, usually the vasculitis patient are not getting admitted in the surgical ward unless patient needs a terminal toe amputation. So most of the patients are having a vascular disease involving the medium size or large vessels. We'll have claudication, we'll have gangrene, we'll have other features of ischemia. So at the beginning, we will not think of vasculitis because vasculitis is more of a medical disease than a surgical disease.
Yes, sir. Okay. Because of only digital gangrene part, I wanted to.
Yes, actually, Nadim, if you consider, because this is an online presentation, there is some drawback. You are taking the diagnosis and going back. But actually, in actual exam, you will get a case. So you have to diagnose. It may have a vasculitis. So you have to diagnose that. You may have arranged a history according to your diagnosis, that is a different thing. But you have to tell in the diagnosis whether this disease is a vaso-occlusive, vasospastic, or vasculitis. So, what is the cause of ischemia? You have to take according to the history, according to the all these things.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, continue.
So in the history, how do you assess Raynaud's? You say patient may have Raynaud's phenomenon.
You have to take all
in the history also you can make out whether patient has got Raynaud's phenomenon or not. How?
Yes.
How in the history? What you ask from the patient?
So in Raynaud's phenomenon, there will be that classical pallor, cyanosis, and
our patient cannot appreciate pallor. If you talk of our patient who are dark skin individual, they cannot come and tell you that my limb become pale. So Raynaud's phenomenon is a sequence of events.
Yes.
What happens in Raynaud's phenomenon? What are the sequence of events? On exposure to cold, what happens first?
Vessel spasm is there,
yes,
leading to pallor of the fingers.
Pallor. So this pallor is not often appreciated by a dark skin individual, where this a white skin individual can make out. From pallor, the next stage is?
So then it, due to accumulation of the metabolite, it goes to stage of cyanosis.
Cyanosis. And next stage is?
And engorgement.
Red engorgement. So our patient who are dark skin, they cannot make out the pallor part.
The patient will tell that on exposure to cold, he gets problem exacerbated. If he or she feels pain in the fingers or toes,
yes,
you have to take that risk.
And patient can appreciate the blueness.
Yes, color changes or like that.
Yes. So pallor is not easily appreciated. So patient, you can ask the patient whether he has got any discomfort on exposure to cold in the toes or in the digits. Any discomfort on exposure to cold, any change in color like blueness. Pallor is not appreciated in the dark skin patients. So any blueness or patient feel the area become turgid and red. And then once this passes off, the attack goes off. So whether this patient has got such changes on exposure to cold, which will suggest a Raynaud's phenomenon. This Raynaud's phenomenon can occur in collagen vascular disease. Patient who has got vasospastic disease may have this Raynaud's phenomenon. Okay, so you should always keep in mind the presence of Raynaud's phenomenon is one feature of Buerger's. It is also a feature of collagen vascular disease, autoimmune vascular disease.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So come on to the examination part. Yeah.
The examinations are general survey. The mental status was alert, conscious, and cooperative. Performance status Karnofsky score was 80. His build was average. Nutrition was adequate. Paces was normal, and diabetes was off choice. He prefers to hang his legs below the bed level. His mild pallor. There are no icterus, clubbing, sinuses, or edema. Neck veins are not engorged. Neck glands are not palpable. Pulse is 86 beats per minute, regular rhythm. Blood pressure is 132 over 72 Hg. Respiratory rate is 11 per minute. Temperature is normal, and BMI is 21.
No, Nadeem. In this case, you cannot tell pulse like that.
Yes.
Okay. In this case, peripheral vascular disease, you cannot tell the pulse like that. You may tell that I shall describe the pulses later on.
Yes. Radial pulse is this. Details of pulses are described with the local examination.
Because pulse always means in the all folding in general survey.
Okay.
Okay.
You say radial pulse here. Radial pulse is this. Details of pulse examination is included in the local examination.
Yes.
Nadeem, you said that patient feels comfortable with the limb hanging below the bed. What is the explanation? Why patient with vascular disease may have some relief of pain on keeping the leg dependent below the bed? What is the explanation?
So by hanging the bed below the bed level, due to weight, so there is hyperemia, and more blood goes to the foot.
More blood goes to the foot, or what happens? Patient has ischemia. That means the circulation is dampened. So what happens on keeping the limb dependent? The explanation is if you keep the leg dependent below the bed, whatever blood has gone down there remains there for a little longer time. Patient has some more extraction of oxygen from this dependent congested blood there. So it's not a very valid explanation, but that is the only explanation that is given. Patient keep the leg dependent below the bed. Whatever blood is there, that blood remains stagnant there for some more time. And this blood which is already there is more extraction of oxygen from the stagnant
time to extract the oxygen.
Yes. So the more blood does not go on dependency. Okay, carry on. Local examination, you should make a heading. Examination of both lower limbs. Suddenly you cannot start attitude of the limbs normal. Which limb you are examining? Lower limbs. So local examination here is the examination of both lower limbs because patient is present the gangrene in the toes.
Okay.
So specify the site you are examining.
Okay.
Okay.
On local examination of the lower limbs, the attitude of the limbs were normal. Muscle wasting seen on the affected limb at the calf level. There is loss of hair and dorsum of toes and foot up to the ankle on the affected side, which is the left. The skin over the left foot appears shiny and thin. Dry gangrene is noted in the second and third digit of the left foot with a clear line of demarcation. Temperature of the left foot is lower when compared to the opposite foot. The capillary refill time is reduced in the left foot. The peripheral pulses, the arteria dorsalis pedis and the posterior tibial artery were found to be absent on the left side. All other pulses were normal. Peripheral pulses were found to be normal and palpable. The arterial wall condition is normal. Adjacent joint movements, besides the involved toe, second and third metatarsopharyngeal joints, the movement is restricted, but all other joint movements are normal. And there are no neurological deficits elicited in the lower limbs. Other systems essentially the normal limbs.
Go back to the slide, Nadim. Why did you get this format?
Yes.
Why did you get this format? You completed everything in one paragraph?
Yes.
Looking at the lower limbs is again a systematic examination. It should be inspection of the lower limbs, palpation of the lower limbs, then palpation of periphery. You have skip everything.
Because it is a long case. It is a long case, you have to tell in details.
Yes. You cannot summarize like this. It can come at the summary, but when you examine, you should examine it properly. If I tell you the points, examine lower limbs, first is the inspection. Attitude of the limbs. What do you mean by attitude of the limbs? What is the normal attitude of the limb? If you ask a gentleman to stand, when you say his attitude is normal, how is the ankle joint? How is the knee? How is the hip? That means you ask the patient to stand with the foot side by side. Ankle should be 90 degrees. Knee straight. Hip straight. That is the normal attitude. Patient with peripheral arterial disease may have some deformity in the joints. Patient may have some deformity in the knees. Patient may have some loss of toes, already amputated. So, attitude. Next is, don't jumble up everything. Next is muscle wasting. You look at the cuff, you look at the thigh. Gross wasting can be made out on inspection. Next is look for the condition of veins. You have not commented anything about the veins. Look at the condition of veins in the legs. If you find the veins are normally full, what does it indicate? Normally, if you have a normal circulation, the blood goes to the arteries, come back via the veins. Patient who has got severe ischemia, the veins may not appear full because the circulation is less. So look at the veins. And there is another term called venous guttering. What do you mean by venous guttering, Nadim?
So venous guttering, when there is a severe ischemia, when there is obstruction of the arterial flow, the veins are not, the veins collapse, sir.
Veins collapse when? That's I'm asking you. You look at the veins. You can find the veins are not seen full. You ask the patient to elevate the leg from the bed. In a normal person, the vein may collapse. Okay, but patient who has got ischemia, in those cases, you can find the depression appearing along the course of the vein. This is very well demonstrated in a patient with ischemia.
Yes, so, even if the patient is lying down straight, yes, before elevating, you may get the guttering.
Yeah. So all these points has to be there. Then come the signs of peripheral ischemia. Next heading should be signs of peripheral ischemia. Yes. You keep in mind, once the patient has got a gangrene, that is the end point of ischemia. Patient has different ischemia. There is no point of saying that hair, shiny skin, loss of hair, wasting. See, they're all secondary points. Once you have gangrene, that is synonymous with severe ischemia. But apart from this, patient may not have a gangrene. In these cases, signs of peripheral ischemia is looked at where? Number one, skin, hairs, nails. These are the important points of ischemia. And then this patient has got gangrenous stage. So the next heading, under the heading of signs of peripheral ischemia, you start describing these peripheral ischemia signs and say this patient has got a dry gangrene in the second and third digit of the left foot with clear line of demarcation. And where is the demarcation? Where is the proximal point of demarcation? You have to say that. So these are the important points. And then come to palpation. In palpation, it starts with the standard description, temperature. This patient definitely has got ischemia with gangrene of the toes. You will find definitely there is loss of temperature. Temperature is less in the particular affected limb. And at one point of time, from the ankle or from the mid leg, it may become normal on either side. So you appreciate the temperature. Then you say there is wasting. This wasting has to be assessed. This wasting has to be assessed by measurement. So you take a measurement from the knee joint, measure the cuff circumference, come to the thigh, measure the quadriceps. So assess the wasting objectively. Yes.
Yes. You have to measure the girth at a particular distance from a fixed point in both ways. Suppose tibial tuberosity, you take a certain distance and measure the distance up to the cuff and measure on the on equal length on the both limbs, and then take the guard on both of the limbs at the same point and see the wasting on either side. So you have to take a fixed point so you can compare from the other limb.
And then now you palpate the gangrenous area. So in gangrenous area, usually gangrenous area is insensitive, but the area adjacent to the gangrenous area is hyperesthetic. You can prick with a pin the site of gangrene, which will be insensitive. But if you prick the area adjacent to the gangrene, it may be hyperesthetic. So examine the gangrenous area. And then you try to palpate the course of the veins. As you said, in Barger's disease, there may be associated phlebitis. You try to palpate along the course of the veins to look for any cord-like feeling or any tenderness in the course of the veins. Then comes the heading of test for circulatory insufficiency. You make a heading. The whole examination is, you have make it very brief. Even you will not pass the exam if you place an examination like this. Next shall be test of circulatory insufficiency. Don't jump to Barger's exercise or Barger's test. That is not done. It's clearly written in the book that this is not done in a Dachs individual. The more important are capillary refilling time. As I said, capillary refilling time, these are all signs of peripheral ischemia. Once you have gangrene in the toes, that indicate patient has got a different ischemia. So in the gangrenous toe, that sign is not to be appreciated. That you appreciate in other toes, where you can appreciate the capillary refilling, because gangrenous toe already is dead. There is no question of demonstrating capillary filling time in the gangrenous toes.
In the adjacent toes only, sir, I can demonstrate.
Yes. So examine for the capillary filling time. There is another term called capillary filling time. That is again not very appreciable in Dachs individual. Then you have not mentioned about the Harvey's test. venous filling time. That you can do. You find a segment of vein, you empty the vein, release the distal finger, the vein fills immediately in normal individual. In patient has got ischemia, this venous filling time may be delayed. So you can mention that the venous filling time is delayed. And then, yes, Dr. Dash, please.
So in short, you have to examine this all the venous system, capillary and arterial system.
Yes.
Keep in mind like that in inspection and palpation also.
And then you have to exclude whether this disease is generalized. Now you make a heading, examination of peripheral pulses. You start with your lower limbs, arteria dorsalis pedis, posterior tibial, peroneal, popliteal, femoral, come to upper limb, radial, brachial, axillary, subclavian, carotid, superficial temporal. And then make a chart and say, yes, these are the findings in your patient, which will exclude a disease in the opposite limb or the upper limb or a carotid disease. So you have to make a chart and denote what is the pulse status. Then examine for the joints, examine for the nerve lesions. So Nadim, this is a very exhaustive examination. In arterial disease, the most important part of discussion goes with the examination of the patient. They're all very important. And you have to know the points. Even the examiner may ask you, palpate the arteria dorsalis pedis pulse. Why do you palpate it? Palpate posterior tibial pulse. What is the point? Why do you palpate the axillary pulse? So you should be knowing the points where, why do you palpate the subclavian pulse? Nadim?
Yes,
how do you palpate the subclavian pulse?
So subclavian is palpated as supraclavicular fossa. So at the level
where is a very large area. In the supraclavicular fossa,
there is a
point
mid-clavicular point.
How do you find the mid-clavicular point? What is the anatomical landmark to point the mid-clavicular point? What is the measurement?
So from the acromioclavicular joint.
So it is difficult to find the acromioclavicular joint. It is difficult to find the acromioclavicular joint from the surface. That's why I'm asking you, how do you find the mid-clavicular point? You find the suprasternal notch. You put one point suprasternal notch. Palpate the spine of scapula from the back and find the angle of acromion. As you trace you laterally, this spine of scapula takes you the acromion, and this acromion bends forward. That is angle of acromion. Angle of acromion corresponds to acromioclavicular joint. So point in the suprasternal notch, point in the angle of acromion, measure the distance. The midpoint is mid-clavicular point. And keep your finger in the supraclavicular fossa at the mid-clavicular point. Ask the patient to shrug the shoulder up and palpate subclavian. So every pulse has got its point to be palpated. Why do you palpate the carotid pulse?
So carotid is palpated at the medial border of the sternocleidomastoid itself, at the level of upper bottom of the thyroid cartilage.
What is a more important area to palpate the common carotid pulse? The point you are saying is the bifurcation of the carotid. But carotid is better palpated another point. Where? At the level of cricoid cartilage. As you trace laterally from the cricoid cartilage, you are palpating the common carotid against the carotid tubercle. Because cricoid is a C6. Cricoid lower border is a C6. And common carotid palpated in the carotid tubercle. So you must read all the pulses and the definite point where these pulses are palpable. Yes. Okay. Next, go to the summary. Because examination is grossly incomplete. You cannot go with this part of the examination in the long case. Now it's a offline exam. Don't think you'll have a online examination. Yes. It's coming as offline examination. The patient will in front of you. You have to examine the patient and give the examiner all the points.
Yes, I'll make this format only.
Okay. Carry on. Next, summary. I'm sure you'll put a summary at the end of Barger's disease that you have not seen yet. Chalo.
So, a 30-year-old gentleman presented with history of pain in the left lower limb in the region of calf for last 2 years. At the onset, he used to experience pain in the left calf region after walking for about 1 kilometer, taking on to walk in spite of pain. Afterwards, his symptoms aggravated and he started having pain after walking for about 200 meters. He had to take rest to get relief from this pain. For last 4 months, patient is having continuous dull aching pain in his left foot, which disturbs his sleep. He has some relief of pain on keeping his leg below the bed level. About 4 months ago, he also noticed gradual discoloration of his left, second, and third toes associated with constant dull aching pain, which eventually involved the entire second and third digits. He has no history of pain in other limbs, no history of chest pain, breathlessness, abdominal pain, loss of consciousness, or tingling or numbness. There is no history of similar pain in the past in any other limb. He is not a known diabetic or hypertensive. He is a known smoker for last 10 years and used to smoke 15 to 20 BDs per day. For last 3 months, he claims to have given up smoking. There is no history of similar disease in the family. On examination, Janus survey reveals mild pallor, pulse 86 beats per minute. The patient wanted to go central emergency. Local examination of both lower limbs. The attitude of the limbs are normal. There are signs of ischemia in the lower limbs, suggested by loss of hair on dorsum of toes and foot up to level of ankle. Skin is thin and skinny. Nails are brittle. Temperature in left foot is lower compared to opposite side. There is dry gangrene involving the left, second, and third toe with clear line demarcation with the gangrenous area and normal skin. On examination of peripheral pulses, there are absent dorsal pedis, perceptible pulse on left side, but other peripheral pulses are normally palpable. The condition of the arterial walls are normal. Adjacent joint movements are normal, and there is no neurological deficit.
Wait. Nadim, making a summary is also an art. Summary is not again describing the whole of history of present illness and the whole of examination. You see, you have to make a good summary. If you come to the summary of the history, come to the summary of the history. You see, it's a very simple history. What you said, patient has got claudication, which was initially 1 kilometer, and then gradually claudication has gone down and resulted rest pain, and then the gangrene. So it's no point describing again 1 kilometer, 200 meters in the summary.
Yes.
Patient, you started saying that patient presented intermittent claudication straight away to PG examination. Patient presented intermittent claudication involving the left lower limb. Initially, claudication is 1 kilometer. Gradually, the claudication has gone down, and he was having rest pain for the last 4 months. Patient complained of black discoloration of the toes involving second and third toes, which has progressed the proximal foot. Patient has no other systemic symptoms. Finish. The whole examination is done. On examination, general service is normal. On looking at both lower limbs, these are the findings. So don't describe the whole history again in summary. Summary should be very precise, taking into account the important positive points. Okay. Dr. Dash, any other point?
Yes. His summary is larger than the actual presentation.
yes. Summary should be more precise. Yes.
So I can use my own term, like I can use terms like intermittent claudication and claudication distance.
You are giving a PG examination, yeah? You are giving a PG examination, and the summary, you are entitled to use this term claudication because you have already taken the history and you are convinced. You can use claudication. Yes, why not?
Okay, sir.
Diagnosis.
So, this is a case of vascular disease affecting the left lower limb. The ischemic gangrene in the left, second, and third toe, probably due to Buerger's disease.
That's why I said, you created a history of Buerger's disease. The patient you have not seen in last 3 years. Have you seen a patient of Buerger's?
Yes, sir.
They are getting less and less number now. So don't create a hypothetical history. You should have created a history of atherosclerotic vascular disease. We can discuss more easily how is the atherosclerotic disease, what are the different options for atherosclerotic disease. So you see, Buerger's disease has become, what do you feel, Dr. Dash? You're finding more and more Buerger's? No.
Yes. No. Yes. And what are the points in favor of your history or examination? You are getting that it is a Buerger's?
So involvement, Buerger disease, so usually there is ocular disease of the small and medium-sized vessels as well.
Start from the beginning. What is his age?
30 years, sir.
Yes. So it should start below 40 or around 40. Buerger.
Yeah. Age is in favor, agreed. Then what else?
Strong association with smoking is there, sir, in the history.
Yes, smoking. Barjat does not occur in non-smokers. That is a very clear criteria. Barjat does not occur in non-smokers. So it is, patient is a smoker. Young patient, 30 years, patient is a smoker. And he studied claudication in the foot and the cuff.
And the extremities. And so this gangrenous fine involvement is more in the small and medium vessels. Like compared to atherosclerotic peripheral disease, there is involvement of medium and large size vessels, mostly compared to Burgess.
Yes. So why, how you have confirmed that this medium and small size are involved?
So the patient does not have any all the other peripheral pulses were palpable, sir, and he did not have any other
specific. Be specific. You got popliteal vessels pulsation on equal volume to the other limb, but you didn't get arterial dorsalis pedis and posterior tibia. This should be your answer. On left side, we got popliteal and femoral normal, but posterior tibial and dorsalis pedis I can get. So this is the either anterior tibial or posterior tibial vessels involvement. So tell like that. Be specific.
Okay.
Okay.
Nadim, I like to change the scenario in this patient. On examination, I find femoral was weak on the right side.
Yes.
Femorals are weak on the right side. Other pulses are normal. And patient has some history of coronary artery disease in the form of anginal pain. So this is more of a disease involving the more proximal vessels.
More proximal vessels.
So suppose I give the scenario now. This is a gentleman of 45 or 50, and finding wise, patient has got claudication in the thigh, and examination revealed femoral pulses are weak, and had a history of anginal pain. How do you like to revise the diagnosis with this change finding of a 50-year gentleman and this finding?
Because of the elderly age group and higher up involvement of the peripheral pulses, like the claudication in thigh and weak femoral pulse along with angina. So this will be more in favor towards atherosclerotic diseases.
Yes. So is the peripheral vascular involving the more proximal vessels, maybe atherosclerotic vascular disease. And point in favor
is the history of erectile dysfunction important?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Why? What does it indicate? If the patient has got impotence, what does it indicate? Patient having atherosclerotic vascular disease also comes with impotence. Does it point toward the site of the disease? This indicates the aortoiliac disease. Patient having disease in the aortoiliac segment may have associated impotence. Okay, so that is important. So now you have a scenario of patient having a atherosclerotic vascular disease with this gangrene in the toes. Forget Burgess. We will not discuss Burgess because this is becoming less and less. So patient having a diagnosis of peripheral vascular disease, the atherosclerosis. How will you proceed? How would you like to proceed with this patient, keeping in mind the reverse diagnosis of atherosclerotic vascular disease?
So first, I'd like to do some investigations to confirm my diagnosis. Yes. For that, so since there is anginal pain also and claudication thigh also, so I'd prefer for a CT angiography of the peripheral vessels.
Say to a CT angiography. Is it the first investigation you order?
So, first, there is UHG, sir, duplex cancer.
Yes. Why do you jump to CT angiography first? We have given a diagnosis of atherosclerotic vascular disease, but the first investigation always is a duplex scanning.
Duplex, sir.
This gives a very reasonable estimate of the degree of ischemia. This can show the involvement of the other vessels. So, what is exactly a duplex study?
So
What is
Duplex
exactly
study?
Duplex study? What do you mean by Duplex study?
So it is a combination of B mode ultrasonography along with Doppler study of the
Yes.
disease.
So, what information you can get by doing a Duplex study? What are the different information you can get?
So the B mode ultrasonography provides the images of the vessels, and the
Yes.
Doppler it gives the waveform, sir. We can know the blood flow, the turbulence, and so the visualization of blood flow.
Have you seen a report? Have you seen a Duplex report in your practice? When you are seeing patient, you might have seen what are the parameters they mention. And if you see a picture, you find something in the picture also. What is shown?
So, triphasic waveform is shown.
One is a waveform. Before waveform analysis, what they say? The first thing mentioned is a blood flow velocity. Blood flow velocity. And when people are doing this study in real time, what are the different information a sonologist can give you? First of all, you can hear audible signals.
Audible sound.
What is the normal audible sound over an artery? If you place a Doppler probe the artery, what is the normal sound you hear over the artery? Normal sound is lub-dub.
Audible.
Lub-dub is a normal sound. In the heart, you hear lub-dub. This lub-dub we cannot hear in the artery using a standard stethoscope. But if you place a Doppler probe, you can hear the lub-dub. That is the normal sound you hear. Once the patient has got a arterial disease in the form of stenosis, if you place the probe over the artery, what do you hear?
The turbulence.
You hear a turbulence rather than lub-dub. So, altered signal. That is one thing you hear, number one. Number two, there is a stenosis. What happens to the flow velocity?
The flow velocity, sir, increases, sir.
And if there is a complete stenosis, the velocity goes down.
Stops, sir, and there is no audible sound.
Okay, so you can measure the flow velocity of the blood in the vessel. That you can measure and it comes as a value. Using a Doppler probe, what else you can do? You can measure the segmental blood pressure in the limbs. How do you measure segmental blood pressure? How do you measure segmental blood pressure in the limbs? How do you measure thigh blood pressure?
So by applying a cuff at the thigh and then...
What cuff? Standard cuff you use for the brachial?
No, sir.
So these are different cuff. You have a large cuff. You have a large cuff which will be around the thigh. And where do you place your probe? Where do you place the probe? Where?
Distal to it, sir.
Where?
On
the popliteal. In
the
popliteal.
Like on the thigh, it is the popliteal.
Yes. So you apply a cuff in the thigh, place the probe in the popliteal. You measure the thigh blood pressure. You can measure the cuff blood pressure. You apply the cuff in the cuff and place the probe over the posterior artery. Then you can measure the ankle blood pressure. Apply the cuff over the ankle and listen in the anterior artery or the posterior artery. We measure the ankle blood pressure. What is normal? When you measure the blood pressure in the thigh, in the cuff, in the ankle, when you say it is normal, there will be some drop. There will be some drop of blood pressure from the thigh to the cuff and then to the ankle. A drop of less than 10 is normal. If a drop of less than 10 is normal, a drop of 10 to 20 is taken as abnormal. That means there is some dampening of flow from this segment to the next segment. So you can measure the segmental blood pressure. And following the same, you can measure the ABPI, Angle Brachial Pressure Index. How do you calculate ABPI, Nadim?
So ankle, it is a ratio of the ankle blood pressure and the brachial blood pressure.
Yes. So that is systolic blood pressure. That is a systolic blood pressure. This is a ratio of ankle blood pressure divided by brachial blood pressure. Normally, it is what value?
So normally it is more than one only. One.
Yes,
point.
normally more than one. So a value of 0.5 to 0.9 indicates mild ischemia. 0.3 to 0.5 indicates moderate ischemia. Less than 0.3 indicates critical ischemia with impending gangrene. So that is the importance of ankle brachial pressure index. What is the fallacy of ankle brachial pressure index in patient who's got diabetes? What is the fallacy of ankle brachial pressure index in patient who's got diabetes?
So in diabetes, because there is arterial calcification.
Yes.
In the tunica media, there
So,
will be
in these cases,
falsely elevated.
This can be falsely showing high value. Ankle brachial pressure may show high value because of medial calcification. What is the most sensitive marker in patient has got diabetes?
So for that, we take this toe pressure.
Yes.
Toe pressure index.
Toe pressure index. So you can measure the toe. You can have very small cuff applied around the toe and insulinate in the digital vessel and get the toe pressure. Okay. So a toe pressure of less than 50 indicates patient got ischemia. So that is a Doppler. Don't just mention Doppler. You have a number of information that can come from Doppler study. One is audible signal, measurement of blood flow velocity, measurement of segmental blood pressure, calculation of VPI, and pulse wave tracing. A normal artery, to place the normal artery, get a pulse wave tracing, it will be triphasic pulse wave tracing. Patient has got a stenosis. This triphasic wave may become biphasic or become monophasic. And with a complete occlusion, it can be a flat curve.
Flat.
Oh, Tata.
Yes, Dr. Dash, we can discuss further. So apart from Doppler, now a peripheral artery disease because of atherosclerosis, what is the next evaluation? Now you say, Nadim, the basic study has to be done. You don't jump to CT angio or MR angio at the beginning. So now in the Doppler study, you have an idea of involvement of vessels. Whether patient has got a carotid disease, patient has got a disease involving the femorals on either side, or involve the aortic area also.
Yes, and by this you can determine whether this is a critically ischemic limb or not.
Yeah.
Yes. The first line of investigation says our duplex can only what is the following points, and other than that, so we can also do CT or MR angiography to visualize the vessels, and so this is more useful in the large vessels rather than the small vessels for CT angiography.
What is the advantage of CT angiography over a invasive angiography? What is the advantage of CT angiography?
So it gives us a visualization of the main veins.
Number one, this is non-invasive. Number one, this is non-invasive. If you do not do angiography, you have to invade a vessel and pass a catheter and do the angiography. A CT angiography is a non-invasive investigation. But you need to give the contrast. In CT angiography, you need to give the patient contrast. Okay, but it gives a very good delineation. Now tell me, I'm giving you a finding. This patient has got a localized narrowing of the femoral segment on the right side. There is no other disease in the other sides. Patient has got some evidence of coronary artery disease. Patient has got ischemic pain in the chest. So this patient has got a coronary artery disease and a disease involving the femoral segment of the left lower limb. What should be done next?
So for this, firstly, we can medical management is given to prevent any further
You cannot stop short of evaluating the coronary artery disease. That is very important. Patient has got a atherosclerotic disease and patient has got associated coronary artery disease. The coronary artery disease evaluation. So you need to do a echocardiography and see the status of the cardiac chambers, and you may need to do a coronary angiography also, because that is more important. Patient has got a coronary artery disease may die of acute myocardial infection. So if the patient has got associated coronary artery disease with ECG or echocardiography suggestive, you should go for a coronary angiography. And then you decide. Coronary angiography does not always mean patient angioplasty or coronary bypass. That depends on the finding of coronary angiography. Now, if you talk to the femoral vessel disease, patient already has got a gangrenous change. What are the options for treatment of a atherosclerotic disease involving a femoral segment of the arterial tree?
So, non-surgical option like medical management may be tried.
What medical management will help? What are the medical management for atherosclerotic arterial occlusion?
Pardon, sir?
Medical management? Nothing?
Yes, sir.
What is the medical management?
So, aspirin and clopidogrel might be tried to prevent the further progression of the disease.
Try to understand. Patient already has a gangrene. Aspirin, clopidogrel are not going to help in this patient. Patient has got critical ischemia. Patient has got gangrene in the toes. And patient has got critical narrowing of the femoral segment. So, you try to understand. The patient is in front of you. If the patient does not have a gangrene, patient just have a claudication, treatment is different. Treatment is different. Relief of pain, exercise, then give this antithrombotic drugs. But patient, you need to take some steps to increase the circulation.
Then, so a stent may be deployed.
So again, you have to think of the options. The options here are either a endovascular treatment or a bypass graft. Stent and others are endovascular treatment. So there is a term called luminal angioplasty. These are indicated when the disease is confined to a small segment of vessel and the distal vessel is normal. So if you have a localized disease, you can consider doing a luminal angioplasty and possible stenting. If it is a long segment disease, this is not feasible. In that case, you need to consider for doing a bypass graft. Okay. So if you have a disease in the femoral segment, what bypass graft you can consider? What may be the optimal bypass graft in a patient who has got a disease in the femoral segment? You have to read. You see, I don't go with the disease called Bardias. Nobody will discuss Bardias now. The discussion will go for the atherosclerotic disease. And patient atherosclerotic disease, there will be one part called as general management. General management, the patient is diabetic, control diabetes. Patient has got lipid abnormalities, control the lipid, giving the patient statins, and then treat the underlying disease. And treatment may be either, as you said, medical management. If it is not a critical ischemia, medical management. And then depending on the extent of the disease, you can either consider endovascular treatment or a bypass graft. So in the femoral disease, what should be the bypass graft?
So in femoral diseases,
apply common sense. Apply common sense. If you have a long segment femoral disease and if you have a distal run-off vessel, you have to do an angiography to find the distal normal segment of the vessel. So in that case, if it's a localized stenosis in the femoral segment, you can do aortofemoral bypass graft. Or if you have a proximal part of femoral artery which is normal, you can do a femoral popliteal bypass graft. So these are all bypass graft to bypass the segment of stenosis. How do you treat the gangrenous area? How do you treat the gangrenous area?
So after phase of clear line of demarcation, since
Yes.
it is gangrenous, so we have to do conservative amputation of the
Yes.
gangrenous part.
So once you have taken the measure to improve the circulation, you wait, because you can go with a conservative amputation. If you cannot do a vascular reconstruction or vascular bypass graft, you need to do a major amputation. So the amputation may be conservative. So read about the atherosclerotic vascular disease. Dr. Dash, any other point?
Yes. Yes. But in Burgess, are these possible? In Burgess, is bypass procedures?
No, sir. They are small vessel disease, so it's not possible to have.
Yes. So what is the pathology in case of Burgess?
Pathology, so there is panvascularitis and lymphocytic infiltration on all three layers of the blood vessel.
So if you ask for how you confirm the diagnosis of Burgess, if you tell all the points of history and also from the histopathology only, you can tell that this is a Burgess.
Yeah. It's a panvasculitis. It's a panvasculitis.
Yes. So what you can proceed in case of Burgess disease? How you have to proceed for treatment? Though may not be of much help, what are the options available?
So the options, medical measure may be tried, but since gangrene has developed, sir,
yes,
usually lumbar symplectomy is to be preferred.
Medical treatment, what usually you can think of? What are the agents?
So first of all, analgesics will be required for the pain, and so antithrombotic agents like low dose aspirin and clopidogrel may be given. Phosphodiesterase inhibitors like salestazole also may be given to increase the circulation.
Yes, because aspirin and clopidogrel not much help because there is not much of thrombosis.
They will help in for the progression of disease.
You can improve the circulation somewhat by improving the cell level, by using chilostazoles and pentoxifylline like that. So usually may not have much help. Anything surgical approach?
Surgical approach. Lumbar sympathectomy was procedure of choice done in this patient.
Yes. What is the logic behind that? How lumbar sympathectomy may help?
So it causes sympathetic denervation, of the lower limb.
So what happens? What is the pathological effect? If you do a sympathectomy, what is going to happen to the vascular bed?
So the resting sympathetic tone is lost, causing vasodilation, sir, leading to the cutaneous circulation that improves somewhat.
Yes, only the cutaneous circulation is improved. Yeah. There is no improvement of coagulation or like that. So that may heal some superficial ulcers like that, and nothing else. So you have to go for, if you have to go for amputation, as in also in the case of atherosclerosis, you have to do this procedure and then fix the level of amputation. And there is another approach, so theoretical, that is called omentoplasty. So by creating a long pedicle of omentum over the gastroepithelial vessels, you can bring it back to the limbs. So it is not very rarely possible. Okay.
Okay. Nadeem, keep in mind that you should give a good clinical presentation and then give a good summary, which will be very brief, and give a relevant diagnosis. Okay. I think we
Yes,
are
sir.
up with time. Thank you, Dr. Dash. Thank you, Nadim.
Thank you, Makam.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Thank you, sir.
Nadim.
Thank you, sir.
Oh.